6, presentation, GCSI update, Gary Owen. We need a motion to receive and file. We have a motion by Carabelli, support by Drollet. Gary, welcome and Happy New Year. Press the button so that your microphone lights up.
Is that better?
Perfect.
Thank you for having me. It's nice to be in front of everybody, and Happy New Year back. I'm going to just give a brief update on, legislative session, some of the calendar year, some of the things that I think are priorities that have been stated privately and publicly, and then talk about several Macomb specific items that we'll be tracking on your behalf that I'm interested in feedback on, and where individual commissioners or the board as a whole may consider weighing in as we move forward. So obviously the legislature is back in full session. The governor gave his annual State of the State and final State of the State speech last week, and as you might imagine, legislative session has now started. That will run regular through the end of March, essentially. The governor will give his executive budget recommendation, his final one, actually tomorrow, and will outline what his priorities will be budgetarily between, or I guess that would be Wednesday, but between now and in the end of the year. I thought it was fitting to talk specific budget and to this committee as well, as it's health related about community mental health specifically, and a few things that you all should be aware of, and I'm sure that you'll be hearing from John Kinch on a more detailed briefing. But originally, you might remember that last year, 17% reduction in Medicaid funding over 16 and 17 left about a $12.5 million hole. GCSI worked with John pretty closely and members of the Appropriation Committee in both houses to get as much as we could to try to fill that hole. The original number was 5.5 million, or 5 million, that we were able to get of the 12.5. A major priority for us is to try to get as much of the remaining funding, obviously, of the remaining 7.5 left in that budget. You'll know that both Oakland and Wayne have went through some pretty significant cuts as well, and were unable to recover any of their costs. So they, not necessarily as a county, but some of the interests have pushed back a little bit on Macomb getting more. But we've started the process now, working with appropriations members, working with the administration to try and get as much of the remaining 7.5 as we can in this budget cycle, which will start tomorrow. Commissioner Carabelli.
Let's take questions.
Yeah, I'd prefer to keep going through it.
I could stop after community mental health and allow for some questions if that works. But so the second piece on community mental health that you should be aware of is a program called the Disabled, Aging, and Blind, and essentially what's happened is folks are going to be redetermined. Folks from the Medicaid population, and actually being kicked out of that program and being forced over to Healthy Michigan or to another program that is a massively reduced rate that the community mental health organization receives. So when these folks go, they're disabled, aging, and blind, and by the nature of the program, right, to go on Healthy Michigan, you essentially have to have the ability to improve. Obviously, if you are disabled, aging, or blind, you are unable to improve any of those, areas of concern within the community mental health program. So what's happening is a lot of these folks are going to be redetermined and being kicked off of this disabled, aging, and blind program and sent over to Healthy Michigan. So I believe the reimbursement for community mental health with those numbers, it's like $267, somewhere in that ballpark, for someone who's on the DAB program, disabled, aging, and blind. And when they get kicked over to Healthy Michigan for Mr. Kinch and CMH, that number goes from like $260 down to like $15. So there's a massive reduction. It's somewhere around $6.5 million in funding that will be reduced. And the Department of Health and Human Services has made pretty clear that they believe that they're not doing anything wrong. They believe that migration, in fact, is right. And so we're gearing up for a pretty significant battle in Lansing over this issue. On the 16th, Mr. Kinch is having a legislative breakfast, I believe, with stakeholders here in the county. I would assume a lot of folks will be there. And we're starting to develop a strategy with the administration. There will be a February supplemental, which we hope to get, a big chunk of to try and fill that $6.5 million hole. But statewide, the hole's close to $95 million for those 2 years. And so that's a major focus of ours heading into this budget cycle, is what they're going to do about that DAB program and how they're going to handle these CMHs, which are still, by the way, statutorily responsible for taking care of all these folks, despite the fact that they're getting $245 less per person. So it's obviously a major problem. It's something that we are attacking full bore. And if there is a supplemental that comes out in February, we hope to be part of it. That starts in the Senate. It should start within the next couple weeks. We hope to have some chunk of it that goes towards it, and then clean up the rest of the $6.5 million hole in the full budget. Before I go any further outside of community mental health.
Okay, Gary, thank you. Commissioner Carabelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Owens. Not to mix this up, first I'd like to talk about the reduction that happened to Macomb County, and you said that there also was a reduction in Oakland and in Wayne. With that said, I'm under the impression that Macomb County had the largest reduction throughout the entire state of Michigan.
True.
With that said, is it true or not true that we may be doing something that the other counties are not doing, that the state is saying they don't want to fund us for?
It's probably a better question for Mr. Kinch, and he can talk to you about the difference between him and other community mental health programs around the state, because they're all
Okay.
put together
you can't
differently.
answer. So, just for my edification, everybody got a reduction, but we got smacked a lot harder than our counterparts. Okay. With that said, you were able to, on behalf of the community mental health, acquire a one-time deal of $5 million for their budget to help offset that reduction, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Second thing is that you're going to try to do your due diligence to recover the $7.5 million of operating expense. That it doesn't sound, well, I'm not going to put words in your mouth. Does it sound that this is a done deal? You're able to get that $7.5 million?
No, I think that it's going to be part of the appropriations negotiations. It's certainly something we're going to try for.
You're going to try, but in reality, what does your gut tell you?
It's early. I mean, he hasn't even, the governor hasn't made an executive recommendation yet. So a lot of it will depend on the revenue estimating conferences as we head towards June. The May revenue estimating conference probably being the most telling. If there's a large surplus, it will allow for Macomb legislators and us together with them to be more aggressive for those extra surplus dollars. If obviously there's no revenue and people are taking cuts, it'll be more difficult for us to try to go grab $7.5 million of general fund and fill that hole.
Okay. So if there's not a large surplus, it doesn't look likely that this will happen. This is the way I'm taking this. And if there is, you're going to be fighting along with a lot of other people to try to get that funding. So would you say if there is a lot of extra funds, it's a 50-50 shot that you can get that?
I wouldn't want to put a number on it. I think the last budget cycle, it was a really difficult fight, and we were able to get $5 million. So I wouldn't want to say that it's impossible. I also wouldn't want to say that it's a done deal. I don't know any percentages.
That's why I said 50-50 if there was money. Okay. I'm just messing with you.
It's fine.
Then the next question goes into, this is special appropriations, and this is something that was already budgeted, that they're anticipating of you achieving this, that if we don't get it, there's going to be major cuts of $7.5 million that was explained to the board. That's where I have a little agita. So with that said, we have to go into the next year after this, and you're going to try to fight for more money, you're going to have to eliminate programs, or we have to change the way we do business. Okay. I just want to make sure I had an understanding of that. Now you said there was another reduction to this Healthy Michigan. my question on that, there was something a few years back that they talked about if states did X, it would bring more dollars in for them to do like this Healthy Michigan. Is this the program I'm talking about, the federal dollars? We're gonna give you more federal dollars to the state if you did it this way.
Yeah, yeah. So Healthy Michigan is basically the state exchange that was set up following Obamacare.
Right, and it's not producing like they thought it would?
No, I think that it is. Actually, enrollment's up. I think that in this specific case, what's happening is folks that are on in this specific DAB program, the Disabled, Aging, and the Blind, they're being asked to go and be redetermined in the Medicaid program. And naturally, they're being migrated over to Healthy Michigan, which is this big reduction in the amount of money CMH can get back from the state or from the feds, because now that patient's not in this program, it's in this program. It's an argument right now, it's a policy argument in Lansing about whether or not they are even eligible for Healthy Michigan, whether or not they can even be moved over to that program, or if it's actually the department's mistake and they shouldn't be classifying them under Healthy Michigan. That's probably the position of the CMH community, is that you're kicking people out of CMH that actually, deserve this elevated rate because of whatever, their condition may be. But now they're being kicked over to this program where they get a much reduced rate, but we still have to care for all of these conditions that the larger rate justifies. And the department is basically saying, yep, that's how we read the rule. So the conversation will be handled in the legislature. The conversation will be handled in the appropriations process in the short term, and then figured out how they're going to handle it in the long term from a policy perspective.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And the list continues. Commissioner Drollet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for your report. Just to clarify real quickly, you just mentioned that there was an interpretation of the rule. Is it that the state is moving these folks into the Healthy Michigan Fund, or is it the federal government rules are requiring the state to do that?
The state would say that it's the federal government rules, but the Community Mental Health Association would say that the state is making the wrong determination, and that it's very obvious, because part of the program in Healthy Michigan is that you have to be able to improve the conditions by which get you into Healthy Michigan and onto Medicaid. You can't improve, obviously, aging or if you're blind or disabled. So that fundamental piece needs to be figured out before they can even really dig into the rule. The state would disagree. The state would say that this is what they have to do by law. They have to migrate these people off of, that program and into another one.
Okay. Do you know if the state has asked for an interpretation from the federal government or a clarification of the rule?
I don't. Actually, Mr. Kinch is coming up to Lansing on the 14th to meet with the state, with us, in the governor's office to walk through some of this stuff.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Next on the agenda, Commissioner Chairman Smith.
Thanks. Thank you for coming out here. I know you don't always have the best news for us, but it's not your fault. So let me just ask you a question on this. You say we're going to be looking at a $95 million hole, at this point, not us, but I mean in general. Is that due to, are they putting this money towards different programs? Are we charging less? Is it less tax money coming in? Where is this money set to go if it's not going to be helping people in community mental health?
So the $95 million shortfall simply is the state interpreting that folks who were getting, CMHs that were getting reimbursed at $265 a piece per patient within, or per person within, that DAB program, now are going to be getting reimbursed at $15 a piece, somewhere in those two ranges. And the discrepancy between those two puts about a $95 million statewide hole into CMHs. So you have like the Lakeshore region out on the west side that has already exhausted their reserves, that simply can't afford or has to make major staff cuts because of this hole. You have, a similar case in Washtenaw, Macomb, Wayne, major hits. So the department has pretty much stood tall on this interpretation. I think the governor's office is looking at it really carefully and trying to figure out if they can do a one-time dollar amount. Does that allow for these CMHs to go forward without a hole?
Right. Well, I guess when you look at a $95 million hole for this side of it, it means $95 million less that they're going to be distributing. So that's $95 million more in their coffer, right? I mean, that they're looking to do something with.
No, I think it's federal pass-through dollars.
federal?
And on top of that, the CMHs are still required by law to see those people and to administer the exact same level of service.
Great. So, yeah, nice. So my last question is, and this is just more for my own benefit. You guys are obviously going to be fighting for us to get that money. But do you represent Oakland, Wayne, other communities kind of on the same fight? And how do you do that when there's a set amount of money, but you have 3 or 4 different people that you're fighting? I mean, you want to get us our 12.5, but at the same time you want to get, I'll say Wayne County, or I don't know who else I should probably know that, but how do you guys work that out?
So the algorithm will decide, based on the large, if there's a dollar amount, the algorithm for the state budget office will spit out what each county gets. On the 12.5 whole, we got $5 million, obviously specifically for Macomb, and Macomb is the only large county that we're the primary lobbying firm for. Wayne County also has a primary firm. We are not. We're the backup.
Okay.
And we don't represent Oakland.
Got it.
So for the 12.5, we specifically obviously are going after for Macomb. On this new pot of money, the DAB shortfall, that's going to be a statewide pot, and based on your population size is what the distribution is going to be. So I mean, for us, we're trying to get the full 95 million. If there is a separate appropriation that we can go after on behalf of Macomb, we obviously will. I just don't see there's no way to do that in this DAB shortfall. It's a little bit different than the other ones.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, we have Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Thank you. If they're required to provide the services and the funding isn't coming in, is that a Headley violation?
I don't think so, because it's a Medicaid implementation piece. It's obviously on the Medicaid side. It's not a state program.
So is it the state that has changed the determination on how the funding takes place, though, not the federal government?
Again, I think to Commissioner Drolette's point, the state is making the determination based on what they believe the federal rule to be, and the community health, Michigan Community Health Association disagrees with that interpretation.
Okay, I guess they are now interpreting the rule that way without any pressure from the federal government. Would that be accurate?
I think it would depend on who you asked over there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Gary, a couple of questions. Going from $265 to $15 is outrageous. Now, the money is going supposedly to this temporary assistance for needy families and Healthy Michigan plan, correct?
Correct.
So those two are going to get in around $95 million.
No, because actually the reimbursement rate drops so much that nobody's going to recuperate those costs within these programs. It's just simply the way that an individual is categorized, and so their service will remain the same. The only difference is that CMHs are going to see a $95 million reduction in federal funding.
Well, okay, then in all reality, our CMH is going to be around in 2 years. After this,
I think a lot of them are struggling. They're being asked to go into their reserves. I would say the Lakeshore region would be the first one that would say they have absolutely no reserves left. There's a separate conversation being had on Section 298 and whether or not it makes sense to privatize some of these services. I know you guys have heard from Mr. Kinch on that specific piece. And what that looks like for the future of CMHs and obviously Macomb CMH in particular. So, yeah, I think that, it's a difficult time.
Well, you have a penchant for the understatement. My understanding, let's go back to the 7.5 million. My understanding was people were working on it last year, and they're still working on it. And nobody can give us a percentage of if that's going to come true or not, correct?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that as we head in, we will certainly be obviously appropriations processes are annual, right?
Right.
So by law, they're able to state that. We will be working with legislative leadership to fill the rest of that 12 million. We're hoping that, to be successful in that together with the Macomb delegation and others that were kind of part of that original conversation.
All right. I'm getting a cut like that through CMH is going to be devastating to that department and devastating to the people that they help on a daily basis. I understand the pass-throughs from the feds and so on and so forth, but this is nuts. From 264 to 15, that basically closed the doors.
Yeah, it's a pretty significant reduction. I do think that, that being said, I think we will be successful in getting some dollars back towards that number. I think that, part of the problem right now is how convinced the department has been in their position on what that is and what that should be. And I do think that you're going to see the legislature work to take some type of action to kind of stop the bleeding in the DAB program, and then maybe work to even augment that dollar amount in the full budget. That's probably the goal, and it's probably realistic right now. So I don't think it'll be a full $6.5 million hit on that program. I do think there'll be something. I think there'll be some relaxation from the department as these negotiations heat up a little bit.
Right.
But obviously, hopefully when I'm back in 3 months, I'll have good news on that front.
Man, we can use some good news. All right. Any other comments or questions? Commissioner Drolet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for recognizing me in the second round. Just real quick, if the federal government is primarily funding these programs, wouldn't the state have an incentive to keep? Why would they? The state's not really saving much money. Most of this money is coming to the federal government. Wouldn't the state government then sort of be supportive of keeping the situation as it is and not reinterpreting that rule?
Yeah. So I will get the exact details on the decision being made at the state level on the redetermination.
Okay.
There's an argument whether or not these individuals should even have to be redetermined, and that's the first decision that the state's making. And they may be, again, in their attempt to revolutionize CMHs statewide, this can be yet another piece, another tool for them to try to rein some of these folks in. And so the first decision they're making is to make folks go and be redetermined in the Medicaid program. And once they're being redetermined, they're being shifted over to these other programs at a much lower reimbursement rate.
But the premise of creating Healthy Michigan was that we're going to leverage all these federal dollars. Mm-hmm. So I would think the incentive is to interpret everything for health, in a way that would leverage the most dollars. And I don't know why the state would try to rearrange things in a manner that would allow them to get substantially fewer federal dollars. It doesn't seem to make any incentive sense.
And that has to do with kind of the second decision that they're making, and that's what I need to get you more info on, is why they would be making that decision.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Hearing and seeing none, we have a motion. First. Okay.
I promise the rest of them won't be
Gary,
that long.
Pray continue.
So I'm just going to talk about a few bills that we are monitoring closely, making sure and we'll keep you all abreast of some of these things moving forward. First and foremost, House Bill 5134 essentially would amend the State Convention Facility Development Act. You may remember that COBO is able to draw a large millage and a big chunk of those dollars go towards debt service at the end of it. An individual from the UP, State Representative Bo LaFave, has a bill that will essentially take some of those dollars being leveraged by Cobo and make them more statewide, take them out of the region, take them out of Cobo, and put it, for example, for a northern state recreational fund. This is something that obviously is not good for the area and something that doesn't have a ton of legs right now. So they're trying to work to see if there's any sort of palatable path forward. I think it's going to have a really difficult time. The Senate Republican caucus met last week, and it didn't go so well for the concept as well. So I wanted to put it on your radar just as it gets developed, but I don't anticipate that bill moving. Another one, 5097, deals with the county right-of-way and something that we're watching pretty closely. Obviously, it would cap the amount of money that local units of government could charge some of these telecommunication companies for dealing with the right-of-way. This is a bill that has been around for a while, but has never had legs. So we're putting it on your radar because it's something that we're going to elevate probably a little bit of attention to as it started to get some more legs, and something that obviously could impact the county. There's multiple drafts going on, and it's in its like 17th iteration. So something that we want to put on your radar, and something that we will make sure works for Macomb in whatever form, that if it does pass at all, that it would work. Obviously working with Brian Santo and some of the folks over there, making sure that it works for their team.
Gary, question, and this is lining up again. Isn't the right-of-way business and so on and so forth, isn't that town-specific or township, city, or whatever specific?
Yes.
Even if it's on a county right-of-way?
Yes. So what the bill would seek to do was cap the ability for whatever local government that is to make sure that they can't charge these exorbitant fees that the telecommunications companies can't afford as they work in the right-of-ways.
Yeah, well, they seem to have made their bed, and now they're screaming that they can't sleep in it.
Correct. So the Telecommunications Association of Michigan, for the most part, is made up of some of these rural providers, and that's who's actually pushing the bill. So they obviously have some projects that they feel they're being overcharged for. They're trying to set a fee schedule that they can live with. The bill's had trouble for multiple years now.
All right. That being said, are we ready for another Q&A?
Always.
Commissioner Carabelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Owens, thank you. The state convention that you had mentioned, wasn't that part of the alcohol, the liquor tax that was funding Cobo Hall?
This has to do with the millage that is actually captured by Cobo. I believe it's a regional millage in Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb.
And that's why I'm asking this question, and I believe it's also, there's liquor tax that goes towards it as well. And with that said, what the hell would the northern people want to do with our millage that comes out of Oakland, Macomb, and Wayne, want to use it up north?
They believe that the particularly the bill sponsor believes that, Cobo is a statewide asset.
But they're not, okay. No, I know. All right.
Easy does it, Commissioner Carabelli.
That's obviously a problem, all right? And then there's an example of Oakland, Macomb, and Wayne paying for stuff again.
Yeah.
The second part is the road portion, the right-of-way you mentioned. I completely understand what they're saying, but at the same token, I can give you an example, and you can take this to Lansing, is that they turned around and repaved 24 Mile into Quinder after Detroit Water and Sewer went through and had to tear up the whole thing. Then they had a problem with the drains. They had to tear it up again and repave 24 Mile into Quinder. Now Great Lakes Water Authority with the gas lines that all went through there. Now they want to come again with a 92-inch main coming again to tear up the same area. And they try to reach out to all the private parties to see if they want to get involved while we're tearing it up for the last time. This will be 4 or 5 times in the last 3 years. And they don't want to share their overall plan because it must be private of how they're going to do their underground work. So major problem with them wanting to say, hey, you can cap this. Well, no, after you shut down a road 4 or 5 times in one community in that period of time, that's ridiculous.
Yep.
So, I mean, the governor, this is the first governor that said, hey, we want to get everybody together so when work has to get done, it can all happen at the same time. That never happened. And it's still not happening. And that's why some of these communities maybe are charging more or whatever it may be because of the discomfort of those residents are tearing up their front yard. They're parking 4 blocks away to walk to their house because they can't access it. So keep that in mind. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. They just hate 24-mile road. That's all there is to it. They hate them both. Commissioner Brown.
On the right-of-way issue, I can understand some of the need for the right-of-ways to have uniform standards, but there is a considerable amount of expense involved in, because this goes to the automated cars and the technology we're going to be putting along Mound Road as a prime example. We're going to add technology along roadways in the future to allow these cars to navigate, and we got to have the places to put the equipment to do it, and we have none of it in there now. So how do you navigate that is very critical. That's interesting. Capping the, I don't think I'll be paying attention to it, but keep us in the loop on that as that goes on. If there's any little, I mean, maybe more than normal, I'd be curious about that because it has a potential to be long-term effects across the state, and just because I don't believe they need caps on fees. I mean, they have to pay their freight because they're going to be, getting money for eternity as long as those things are in place there. So I don't know. So it's simply for that, based on what I know now. So, but that's a major issue for everything that we're going to build in the future. Every road, every sidewalk. Thanks.
Thank you. Seeing nowhere else, pray continue.
Couple environmental bills that I wanted you to make aware of. The Senate passed a package of bills that will create a new panel to oversee DEQ rulemaking authority, take it out of the hands purely of the Department of Environmental Quality. Those bills are now in House Natural Resources and will be vetted. This is a package that's been around for a while, something that happened in Indiana. Michigan Chamber is the one pushing the package, and I think that the administration started very much opposed. They've made a lot of changes in the 2 bills, and I know you have what I sent electronically so that you can click on some of the analysis that those bills have that can talk a little bit more about each of the members that will be part of this new rulemaking panel if it passes all the way and the governor's willing to sign it. I think I would mention that obviously with full Republican control now since 2010, you'll see a package of bills regularly now between now and the end of the year, and in lame duck depending on who's elected. That puts a lot of things that are in the rules, especially on the environmental side, on the natural resource side, take them out of the department's hand and put those things in statute where they believe they're safer and harder to manipulate depending on who is elected. So it's something we'll be watching very closely. And then, of course, the 201 cleanup criteria standards are still being negotiated, and those will be finished relatively quickly, but obviously impact every community in the state on certain criteria and standards for certain chemicals. So strengthening all of those standards and chemicals. So should be pretty positive package. Any questions on the DEQ stuff? The last I wanted to mention,
Gary, one question on the DEQ stuff. Are they going to be responsible for the Enbridge line number 5 under the Mackinac Bridge?
So the governor asked Enbridge to temporarily stop moving crude under the Straits of Mackinac. They are in regular communication and negotiation with the administration. It's unclear how much authority they have on just stopping the crude.
Right.
But they're certainly asking publicly for that to stop for now as they work towards making sure the pipeline is safe. Enbridge has agreed to make a number of improvements. So we'll see how that all shakes out over the next 9 months.
All right, I'm interested in hearing what goes on with that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all I have. I don't know if there's anybody, with any questions overall or anything further that I might be able to get information for.
Any other comments or questions? Chairman Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Gary, I'm pretty sure we emailed you some questions about House Bill 5446.
Oh yeah, I apologize. That's the from Representative Lucido.
Right. Can you explain this, and if it has any, with any of the repeals or anything like that, it has anything to do with this county?
So I was unwilling to reach Mr. Lucido today. I'm sure we will talk. I did give him a call after I received the email from Crystal to try to figure out what the impetus behind the bill was. And so if it works, then I can just figure out more details. Obviously, it was just introduced, and I don't have a ton of details on exactly what the intent, what his personal intent is, and I don't think it'd be fair for me to guess or assume without me talking to him directly.
Well, and for those of you that didn't read it or didn't get it, I think Patty sent it out, but it's a bill to repeal 1947 PA 261, and it's basically, on the face of it, says for populations of over 1 million, it's taking the onus of setting the pay for all the elected officials away from the board, and I think it's giving it to, I would assume, the executive. I'm not really sure how it works, but it's not real clear what's going on. On the face of it, it doesn't really look like it affects us because it's for populations of over 1 million. However, some of the repealing statutes, some of the statutes that are looking to be repealed with this kind of really cross over into our world of setting this pay and when we set it and all of that stuff. So I'm not, I need a little more information as to.
I share your confusion when I was looking at it as well. So I'm hoping to clarify at least personally the intent for the representative. And as soon as I do hear more, I'll make sure that information gets there. So.
Okay.
It like I said, it's recently introduced. It's in committee, and I will get some more details and report back directly to you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? Seeing and hearing none, we have a motion and support to receive and file. Yes.
I do have a question on something else. Road funding. I'm wondering if I can ask that question to him. Very simple question. Gary, thanks for coming here today. I just have a simple question, because residents are really ticked off on the condition of the roads. And I think they're also ticked off at the inaction of our state leadership and of both parties, Democrats and Republicans. I truly believe that. Does Lansing, either Republicans or Democrats, either or, Lansing government feel any urgency on finding funding for roads?
Yeah, so in the State of the State, the governor particularly said, I believe, $350 million, $325 million to go towards roads. And in addition, it will definitely be, top 3 topic of conversation in an election year. Obviously, everyone is up this year: the Senate, the House, the governor, Attorney General, Secretary of State, all of Congress, and one of our U.S. Senate seats. As you articulated, I think it's at the top of everybody who lives in the state's mind as a major issue that needs to continue to improve. I do think that the governor is going to try to get as much money as he can for roads.
Where would that come from exactly? Is that a one-time deal?
Yeah, one time from the general fund.
But that doesn't solve it. See, that doesn't solve it. You need a funding source that's there every year, consistent, not a one-time. See, it's just inaction, and what are they afraid of? That's what I don't understand. What are Democrats afraid of? What are Republicans afraid of? Why doesn't this get done? I'm hearing that people who run for office sometimes have to sign an affidavit. Joe Smith, will not raise taxes at all in Lansing. Does that happen? I mean, what's the special
it's getting
interest?
in a little bit higher than my pay grade. The reality is I think that there's different solutions to the road issue. Everybody disagrees about what those solutions are. They put a package forward that they believed stopped the bleeding. Some others didn't. and they're going to readdress it. I think this year they're going to take a hard look at it. I do also think with the composition of the legislature the way it is today, you're not going to see a tax increase in 2018, period. It's just not going to happen. So, you know, there may be a shift in 2018. There may be a shift in the gubernatorial spot, in other spots, who knows. But with this legislature, you can talk, you know, I feel very comfortable saying that, you know, legislative leadership has stated for the most part that, you know, a new tax increase is not the way to fix.
And how are they going to fix it? Are they going to go to church and pray and the roads are going to be fixed? I mean, that's the way you fix roads. You invest in your community. You know, I'm sorry, but sometimes taxes are needed and roads are way underfunded. We all know that. The gas taxes were 19 cents in 1999. They were that way for many years. They were raised 7 cents more to 26.5 cents, I believe. And that's not enough. And that's not a joking matter. And I don't understand the mindset of what they're doing. I mean, because I hear it from the voters, and we all hear that, and that's why there's more reliance now on local millages to fund things. And then there's the question there, are local millages good enough? Because I don't know if you know this, Gary, some commissioners and the county executive have floated around a countywide millage for road funding. So that's what happens when they aren't adequately funded in Lansing.
Yeah, and I don't have the exact details of the package that passed in 2015, and to be fair to legislative leadership that was involved in that package, I wish I did, because I could talk about exactly what the revenue was raised annually. I believe it was $500 million in new revenue annually. So yeah, I think that the governor, obviously, as you mentioned, there's conversations statewide that new revenue, more revenue is needed to get to where people want to go. The biggest problem is just a solution on how to get there. Is it a tax increase on gas? Is it a wholesale? Is it moving it to wholesale tax? Should you do it at the registration fees? Should that apply? Should you do a flat fee for used vehicles?
It's just the game up there, you know. It's shameful that this goes on and on year after year after year. They're shorting us on road funding, and I'm so frustrated by this. And talk is very cheap. But thank you for coming here and listening, answering questions.
And we represent the road builders too, so I promise we're trying.
Thank you, Gary. Any other comments or questions? Hearing and seeing none, we have a motion and support to receive and file. Please vote. Hopefully our electronic. I think mine still needs an impact adjustment.